Many gardeners carefully tend their plants for weeks, watering and trimming, yet sometimes the fruits of their labor remain surprisingly small. You might notice tomato and cucumber plants with large, vibrant leaves spreading generously across the garden bed, and still only a few fruits appear. It can feel confusing because the plants look healthy, even strong, yet the harvest seems disappointing. This is a situation I have observed many times over years of watching gardens, and if this has happened in your garden, you're not doing anything wrong. Plants can thrive in leaf growth while quietly holding back fruit production. Something subtle is often missing, a quiet factor that isn't immediately obvious. Later, you'll see how a very simple adjustment can shift this balance, leading to fuller harvests, and it doesn't require heavy work or complicated routines. Before explaining why this happens, it helps to understand what gardeners often overlook in the early weeks of plant growth. While many focus on sunlight, watering schedules, and the occasional pruning, there is another factor that can quietly shape the difference between a few fruits and a bountiful harvest. Plants need the right kind of nutrition at the right time, not just large amounts. The timing and form of nutrients can influence when flowers appear and how many will actually develop into fruits. Experienced gardeners often notice that minor adjustments in soil feeding, applied carefully, trigger noticeable changes. It is not about adding more fertilizer, but about giving plants what they truly need at specific moments in their growth. This understanding helps explain why some seemingly healthy plants can remain surprisingly sparse in harvest. Overlooking this step is common, and it's perfectly natural for beginners to miss it. Observing these subtle signals from your garden can make a significant difference over time. It is also easy to assume that larger plants will naturally produce larger harvests. But that is not always the case. Some plants grow abundantly in leaves, creating shade and volume while producing fewer fruits. They may appear lush and vigorous, yet the energy is focused more on leaf expansion than on flowering or fruiting. Plants sometimes become too comfortable, especially when they are well watered and fertilized without balance. Recognizing this pattern allows gardeners to shift focus from simply encouraging growth to guiding the plant toward productive flowering. By paying attention to plant behavior rather than just appearance, we can begin to see where small adjustments may lead to better fruit production. Gently nudging plants toward what they are capable of giving, gardeners often notice something unusual when small, consistent changes in care suddenly produce a visible effect. A plant that had only a few flowers may begin to bloom more vigorously after a subtle adjustment to its feeding. This moment can feel almost like a quiet revelation, showing how sensitive plants are to their environment and care. Flowering is closely linked to the conditions below the soil, where roots interact with nutrients, water, and microorganisms. Observing these changes can help gardeners connect what happens above ground with subtle signals in the soil. These discoveries highlight the importance of patience and observation, reminding us that noticeable improvements often follow gentle, thoughtful care rather than constant intervention. After noticing these small changes, experienced gardeners often rely on a simple habit that quietly supports fruiting plants. Just one small, measured addition to the soil can make a noticeable difference over time. The emphasis is on minimal amounts rather than heavy fertilizer use, which can overwhelm roots or encourage leaf growth over fruiting. Applying this tiniest measure consistently helps plants shift focus from vegetative growth to producing flowers and eventually fruits. This practice is often repeated by gardeners who have observed patterns over multiple seasons. Seeing that small, deliberate actions often have more impact than larger, irregular ones. By following a careful approach, gardeners can nurture plants without exhausting effort or risking harm, creating a gentle balance that encourages the natural development of flowers and fruits. Fruiting plants such as tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers respond particularly well to these small, measured adjustments. Unlike leafy vegetables, these plants have a natural tendency to allocate energy toward fruit once their nutritional needs are balanced. When the right nutrients are available in appropriate amounts, the plant gradually shifts from producing more leaves to producing more flowers and fruits. This transition is subtle and gradual, often noticeable only after careful observation over several days or weeks. Understanding this helps gardeners appreciate why small, Precise feeding habits can yield larger harvests, emphasizing the value of observation and consistency rather than frequent, heavy intervention. A common misunderstanding among gardeners is the belief that adding more fertilizer will automatically increase vegetable production. While it seems intuitive, overfeeding can actually reduce fruiting by encouraging excessive leaf growth or stressing the plant. Plants have natural rhythms, and overwhelming them with nutrients can disturb these rhythms rather than enhance them. Recognizing this helps gardeners adjust their approach, focusing on small, carefully timed additions rather than constant applications. By paying attention to plant responses, it is possible to support healthy development without creating unintended consequences. Fostering both confidence and understanding in gardening practices, gardens also respond differently depending on climate, soil temperature, sunlight, and rainfall. A technique that works well in one region may produce slower or more modest results elsewhere. Cooler climates may delay flowering, while warmer areas may speed it up. Soil composition affects how nutrients are absorbed, and sunlight influences how energy is distributed between leaves and fruits. Acknowledging these differences reassures gardeners that variations in results are natural. Observing local conditions and adapting care thoughtfully allows for steady progress, emphasizing that successful gardening is often about responsiveness rather than rigid routines. It is also important to maintain gentle safety habits when adding any soil nutrients. Using small, measured amounts, spreading them evenly, and avoiding excess protects the roots and preserves soil health. Consistent observation and careful handling reduce the risk of overfeeding, root burn, or imbalances in the soil ecosystem. This approach fosters confidence in beginners and experienced gardeners alike, showing that measured, thoughtful actions are more effective than frequent heavy applications. Taking simple precautions supports long-term plant health and creates a sustainable foundation for ongoing harvests. Ultimately, the quiet principle of successful gardening often comes down to doing less and observing more. By watching plants carefully, noticing subtle changes, and making small, deliberate adjustments, gardeners can encourage fuller harvests without constant effort. Trusting the natural rhythms of your garden and stepping back to let growth unfold can reveal more than hours of work ever would. Sometimes the garden improves when we simply step back and observe. If you're comfortable sharing, I'm curious how often you notice subtle changes in your plants during a week. By embracing patience and observation, it is possible to guide plants toward their best potential while keeping gardening a calm, enjoyable practice. This approach highlights that even small habits, applied consistently and thoughtfully, can have a meaningful impact on fruiting plants. Tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers may gradually respond to measured care, producing more flowers and fruits over time. By focusing on observation and timing rather than forceful effort, gardeners can foster healthy growth and increase yield quietly and gently. Confidence grows as you notice these patterns, understanding that success is not about constant work, but about subtle guidance. Stepping back, watching, and learning from each season allows gardening to remain both productive and calming, demonstrating that careful attention and simplicity often yield the most satisfying results. By approaching your garden with patience, respect for plant rhythms, and a calm eye, it is possible to nurture fruiting plants successfully. This method encourages a balance between minimal intervention and careful observation. Over time, the garden rewards consistent, thoughtful habits more than busy, constant activity. Learning to recognize when plants are ready for subtle support and when it is best to step back can transform both your harvest and your enjoyment of gardening. In this way, doing less can truly result in getting more, reinforcing the idea that the garden thrives when attention and care are applied gently, not forcefully. Through seasons of practice, the principle becomes clear. Small, deliberate actions, combined with patient observation, allow fruiting plants to reach their potential. The practice of watching carefully, responding thoughtfully, and avoiding excessive interference builds confidence and understanding. Over time, patterns emerge, showing that the healthiest harvests often come from subtle guidance rather than constant labor. This approach is gentle on both the gardener and the plants, supporting a calm, sustainable, and satisfying gardening experience. By incorporating these simple habits, the garden becomes a place of quiet learning and steady improvement. Observing soil, noting plant behavior, and applying small measures at the right time leads to fuller fruit production. Naturally, as you see the results of careful attention rather than force, the garden becomes a reflection of patience, observation, and thoughtful care, demonstrating that meaningful progress often comes from stepping back and allowing nature to follow its course. With these practices in place, gardeners can enjoy a sense of reassurance, knowing that their efforts are guided by observation and understanding rather than constant intervention. The results are gradual but reliable, showing that careful small habits can gently increase fruit production. By trusting in the plant's natural rhythms and adjusting subtly as needed, gardening becomes a rewarding, calm, and confidence-building activity. Over time, this approach encourages both a healthy harvest and a peaceful gardening experience. In the end, successful gardening often comes from patience, observation, and small, consistent habits. By focusing on careful, gentle guidance rather than constant work, it is possible to encourage fuller harvests while keeping the experience calm and enjoyable. Stepping back, observing, and learning from the garden allows plants to thrive naturally. Sometimes the garden improves when we simply step back and observe, revealing that quiet attention and thoughtful care are often the keys to a satisfying and productive gardening season.